Hey there! Today we're going to talk about an ink of which I got a sample, and this is the sample. This is what is left. I've just actually shot the writing part. This is what I reclaimed from the pens. In total, I think I got a little under 2 milliliters of this ink, so things were running a bit dry, but fortunately everything went well in the sample, so that's good. I got this sample from Chris. Chris sent me a baggie. Here's a baggie. This is not really, cannabis. This is just a fountain pen lover's baggie. And there's a bunch of stuff in there. And I think some inks may have already been covered. Let me just do a quick check. So today, we're going to talk about De Atramentis Ochre Yellow. And it's spelled as O-C-H-E-R, and I spell it as O-C-H-R-E in the sample. Sorry, maybe that's a British spelling, I'm not sure. So this we've covered. Then there is, I'm just going to go through them very briefly. There is Diamine Soft Mint, which looks like it's a bit more, so I can definitely do an entry on that. There is Lamy Black. Take notes here, because if you really want to see one, leave a comment at this video and I'll see what I can do. We have De Atramentis Aubergine, which sounds very interesting and purple-ish. We have Sailor Gentle Grenade. I guess it's not one of those grenades. These were ink drop samples, and Chris sent them to me because she didn't care for these particular colors, should you wonder. Diamine Matador. Sounds very red. We have De Atramentis Moss Green, which indeed looks mossy to me. We have Rohrer und Klingner Alt Gold Grün. This one will have to go in there because I get a lot of requests for this. Alright? Put it somewhere I can find it. What on earth did that hit? Oh, actually that hit a little canister with some nibs and feeds that are being cleaned right now, hence the weird sound. Diamine Graphite. That's pencil-ish. It looks quite black, but maybe it's a very dark gray. It's hard to see. We have Rohrer und Klingner Alt Bordeaux, another nice purple, as far as I can see. We have De Atramentis Fur. Hi, I'm Douglas Fur. Figure that one out. We have De Atramentis Silver Gray, which looks like a dark gray to me, but okay. We're almost there. We have De Atramentis Indigo Blue. If you like indigo or indigo blue, then it looks like a pretty fancy blue, actually. I may have to put that in there. I mean, I can put them all in there, of course, but if you've got any preferences of what you want to see first, then you've got to let me know. Then we have De Atramentis Oriental Red. Yep, looks like a dark red. Alright, and then there were 3 others. Oh wait, I'm not even done. We've got Noodler's 54th Massachusetts. Okay, I know that people are going to request this because it's a Noodler's ink. And then we have De Atramentis Gandhi. And I was actually close to picking this for this week's encyclopedia entry. This might be an extremely bright yellow. And my experience with yellow inks is that they cannot be read. I'm not going to do a video of an ink that cannot be read, because then you're just staring at me putting illegible ink on a blank sheet of paper. Actually, that's the definition of encyclopedia, watching me write illegibly, but still, you know what I mean. If you can't see the ink, I think it's pointless. And then there were 4 samples that Chris actually made for me. Here we have Diamine Ochre. Oh yeah, this was another, okay. We have Sargasso C from Diamine, we have Diamine Syra, and we have Diamine Chocolate Brown. So if those appeal to you, then let me know. And you know what? That's all there's to it. This was a lengthy introduction. The ink we'll be using today, Ochre Yellow, is just that. Ochre Yellow. It's not really a yellow. This is more of an orangey brown, or if you don't like that, a brownish orange, I would say. Pretty interesting. I liked this ink a bit better than I expected I would like it. I think this was the first De Atramentis ink I've ever used in my life, and I am actually considering picking this up right now, so I'm fairly enthusiastic. enough talk. I think you need to see the ink in action, and that's what we're going to do next. So I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye. Alright, so here we go with something that's just been smeared on the paper. Not sure whether the camera picks it up, but it's there. This is De Atramentis Ochre. Let's start with some fine writing. I know there was some shadow there, but now you're going to see the ink. It says De Atramentis. You cannot read that because this is a very fine nib and it's not particularly saturated, so we're moving on to a medium nib. You still can't read it because I wrote it very small because it was the end of the page. And finally we have a bit of italic. Get this paper out of the way, sorry. De Atramentis. Alright, up next is some flex writing. Now I hope you'll forgive me, but because I had just a little under 2 milliliters of ink, I really had to work with what I got here, and you know the flex pens can be a little finicky to get to write. So I'm not going to write a full sentence. If nothing else, I want to save some ink. So I'm just going to write these odd lines are from the feed that's touching the paper. And will you believe it, we actually get an ink flow. Hello, ochre. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to do a full sentence because I want to save what ink I have in here so that I can do the sample on copier paper later on. And I have to take a sip of tea. Ah, much better. Alright, so what do we get? Well, we get an ochre. And there's a couple of things I like and a couple of things I don't like. This ink is as new to me as it is maybe to some of you, because, as I said, I got a sample, I've never used it, and as I had so little, I didn't really want to use it up for myself. A couple of things I like. First of all, shading. Pretty nice shading going on there. It's not excessive, but it's definitely there. As far as I'm concerned, this could be full marks on the shading score. One thing I don't really like is if you have a thin, so a very fine nib, I think reading back what you wrote gets a little harder. With a broader nib it's not so much an issue, but with these it definitely is. Look at this, beautiful. I like how this turns out. Very nice ink, pretty good flow. I'm fairly impressed. So let's do some passes and see how this looks in different nib saturation level factors with like stuff and things especially. First pass. While we're at it, we may as well do a bit of fat writing. Wait. just nib angle. This, I suppose, would be a foundational O, a more Old English O. The problem is the O is not the most spectacular letter of the alphabet. I'm sorry for everyone who actually has it in their names. I mean, there isn't a whole lot more to make of it than this. So I'm sorry. This is the O. And then we're going to do some regular writing with a medium nib. And then we're going to feel how dry this is. Looks good to me. That looks a little wettish. But I'll take that. Anyway, there we go. Alright, second pass. I think we can safely start with the eyedropper of death. No, because it's not dry. However, the bastard brush can do its devastating work. Look at that. I'd almost say that ink is waterproof. I'm really brushing away here, and I'm destroying the paper, but the writing still seems fairly legible. Awesome, dude. Alright, still a bit wettish, but it's good enough. Eyedropper of death. Alright, now, you know what I would usually do. First I'm going to do a triple pass here. Usually this is the point where I would do a brown benchmark and a Tardif test. Now, the problem is, I have this much ink left. So I'll see what I can do, but I would say don't expect too much, because it's going to be hard to get out any ink. Alright. The Tardif test. And yeah, oh, this is going to be fascinating. The brown sideways benchmark. Actually, that's not too bad, considering there was so little ink. Alright, I think we can start to work on our scorecard, I say as I am gently wiping off my finger here. Scorecard. Cleaning. Well, in all honesty, I'm not sure yet, because I've never put the ink in a pen that I have cleaned. Considering it seems to be relatively waterproof, I'm going to give this a tentative score of 2, so middle range score. I could be wrong, but I've never cleaned it, so I really cannot know. You'll have to find this out for yourself. Should I find it is particularly easy or particularly difficult to clean, I'll add an annotation to the video. Bleed through we'll check later. Color. Well, color would be an ochre. We have shading. For some reason it always reminds me a bit of Jaws. I don't know whether you ever have that, but shading. 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 Well, that's the kind of feeling I always get. I don't know. I'm going to give this full marks for shading. I mean, just look at this. Very nice. I appreciate this, and it's maybe not as excessive as Apache Sunset, but then again, which ink is? So I'm full marks there. Flow. Well, flow seems to be very good. We have feathering. Something we'll have to assess later, but if I look at this very wet flexi writing, I think I already see a little bit of feathering there, to be completely honest. Switch on the light. It's not extremely bad, but hey, this is Rhodia. But if Rhodia already has some apparent feathering, then I can only fear for the copying paper. Drying time. Well, that seems to be pretty good. This is pretty much dry. On Rhodia, yes, I give that a 1, full score. Waterproofness, yes, we have to assess that, don't we? Waterproofness, let me grab some type of towel-like object. I'm going to probably smear some other ink in there, but I don't have a tissue at hand right now. No, that's good. Alright, so part of the writing is gone, but this was quite some water. I would say it's a relatively waterproof ink. Probably not fantastic, but it's not exactly terrible. Is that a 1 or is that a 2? Well, considering this is completely legible, I'm going to give it a 1, full marks. Alright, so what have we got from the other tests? Well, here we have the Tardif test, which again shows us that nice shading you get from a quite light ochre to a very saturated, deep, dark orange. A true ochre, in other words, and you see it from the brown benchmark as well. So there you have it. We can tear this off. Was that actually my final sheet of Rhodia? So it was. Well, almost that entire notepad has been used in Inkcyclopedia entries. How about that? And then we have some copier paper. Alright. Let's start with some fine writing. Es copier paper, amigo. No, wait, other way around. Again, you see that very low saturation here, which is it's quite odd. This is already much better. Broad. And italic. All my feathering fears are actually coming alive here. And then the terrifying moment of flex. It worked before. not bad, and I think I'm really running low on ink here. Well, maybe I wasn't. You know, this is the scientific way to find out such things. You just operate the converter and see what happens. If things explode, you were wrong. I don't want to turn this into a commercial, but this is Visconti blotting paper, and I absolutely love it. If you don't know it, it's laminated on one side. So you got all your ink there, and you don't get ink on your fingers because it doesn't bleed through. I mean, it does bleed through, but you can't get it on your fingers because it's laminated. Lovely stuff. I can highly recommend it. Alright. And then, finally, now, what would this actually sound like in Spanish, I wonder? Xerox? Xerox? No. Javier. Xerox. No, I can't say it. I don't know. Xerox in Spanish. It's about the least interesting and useful thing we've got going here. But nevertheless, I have lost the cap to... Oh, here we go. Cap to this pen. I want to find out how we're doing on that feathering stuff. Well, in the normal writing it doesn't seem to be a huge issue, although you may see some preliminary feathering there in the really wet, broad nib. In the flex nib, really flex to the max, crazy featherings going on. That's what I was expecting to find, actually. In the really fat writing, you can see the feathering, but it's not extremely pronounced. It's just sort of, how shall I put that? Premature feathering or something. It's not really developed, but you do see traces of it. Interesting. What about bleed through? Bleed through is significant on the really flexy writing, definitely, but I can also see it here in the broad writing. Even in the fine writing, I see bits have bled through. You see that here, for example? That's definitely bled through. So, on Rhodia, bleed through is not really an issue, of course. But still, we will have to put that into the scorecard. Bleed through, well, it's actually quite bad on this paper. I mean, almost every bit of writing has some bleed through in it. Saturated ink. I'm going to give that a score of 3. That's the lowest score. It clearly depends on paper, but as you can see, I mean, if even a medium or a fine pen, a fine nibbed pen that is not saturated at all and not wet at all bleeds through on copier paper, then I think there's something, you know, feathery in the state of Denmark. I mean, bled, smelly. Something is fishy in the state of Denmark. What? No? Huh? Well, anyway. Something smells slightly off in the state of Denmark. Come on, what's the quote? Now I can't remember it. Anyway. Feathering. It's not too great. I'm going to give that a 2. It's not too bad, but it's not too great. Which gives us an inkage factor of 2, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. And finally, I'd like to do a small comparison with another ink, and I had some issues finding a good comparison ink. So in the end, I went for Gerbin ink. Here we have, I'm not going to write down De Atramentis because I'm not sure how much ink is left here. This is ochre. It looks like this. In flex pen you can do this. And here you've got some idea of the color. I thought the closest I could get to that would be, let's first see if it writes, would be Gerbin Orange Indian, which is a sort of, I've covered that in a previous Inkcyclopedia entry. This is a sort of henna-like color, making it not a bright orange like Noodler's Dragon's Napalm, for example, which is really flashy bright orange. This is more restrained. It's more like an ochre, I suppose. And I think now that I see them side by side, I think these colors do have a bit more in common than I was afraid that we have. So, looks good to me. And you know what? That's all there's to it. So here we have it, De Atramentis Ochre. An interesting ink. Chris, thanks for the sample. I'm glad it worked out, glad it was enough ink. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.